December 18, 1944, 11:45 a.m. Bastogne, Belgium. Snow falls straight down, thick and soundless, muffling the thunder of artillery that never quite stops. The forests around the town are choked with smoke and splintered pine. Somewhere beyond the white haze, German 88s crack and echo, their shells folding roads inward, chewing at stone farmhouses and frozen foxholes. Inside Bastogne, the cold is absolute. Men of the 101st Airborne huddle in basements and shallow trenches, boots stiff with ice, fingers numb around rifle stocks. Ammunition is counted twice. Bandages are rationed. Morphine is nearly gone. The wounded lie shoulder to shoulder on church floors, breath fogging the air, waiting for medics who may never arrive. And now the roads are gone. Every approach into Bastogne, north, south, east, west, is cut. Panzer divisions have closed the ring. What began as a German gamble has turned into a tightening noose. You can almost feel it, the slow realization creeping through the town, the sense that this place has become a trap. At Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, more than 100 miles away, the atmosphere is no warmer. Versailles, France. The SHAEF war room smells of cigarette smoke and wet wool. Maps cover the walls, thick with grease pencil marks that no longer make sense. Red arrows, too many of them, are pushing west. American units are bent backward, some shattered, some missing entirely. General Dwight D. Eisenhower stands at the center of it all. He hasn't slept much in days. His jacket hangs loose on his shoulders, eyes sunken, jaw clenched as report after report comes in. The German Ardennes offensive, what intelligence dismissed as impossible, is now undeniable. This isn't a spoiling attack. It's a full-scale counteroffensive. And it's working. Field phones buzz, staff officers whisper, couriers move fast, then faster. Bastogne is mentioned again. Then again. Then it doesn't stop being mentioned. A crossroads town, 7 roads. Whoever holds it controls the movement of armor across the southern shoulder of the German advance. Eisenhower understands that instantly. If Bastogne falls, the German 5th Panzer Army can roll west unhindered, threatening Antwerp, splitting the Allied front clean in two. This isn't just a tactical problem. It's a strategic fracture. Eisenhower leans closer to the map. Snow icons mark the Ardennes, terrain already brutal even in summer. Now it's mid-December. Roads are iced. Visibility is near zero. Aircraft are grounded. Resupply is a dream. And Bastogne is surrounded. Someone says it out loud at last. The 101st is cut off, sir. The room goes quiet. Eisenhower doesn't respond immediately. He studies the map, then looks up. Who can get to them? No one answers. The First Army is reeling. The Ninth is stretched thin. British forces are too far north. Logistics are in chaos. Fuel is scarce. Movement is slow everywhere except where the Germans are moving fast. For the first time since Normandy, Eisenhower feels it. That cold pressure behind the eyes. The weight of command when there are no good options left. Then from the edge of the room, a voice cuts in calm, almost casual. Hell, sir, I can do it. George S. Patton steps forward. His helmet liner is tucked under one arm. His uniform is immaculate despite the weather. He doesn't look rushed. He doesn't look worried. If anything, he looks ready. Eisenhower turns toward him. Patton doesn't point at the map. He doesn't ask questions. He states a fact. My Third Army can attack north. Several heads snap up. North. Through the Ardennes. In winter. Staff officers exchange looks. Someone frowns. Someone else shakes his head slightly. The roads Patton would have to use are narrow, forested, choked with refugees, wrecked vehicles, and German patrols. His army is oriented east, pushing toward the Saar. To turn north would mean pivoting 3 corps, nearly 250,000 men, in the worst weather Europe has seen in years. It sounds insane. Eisenhower narrows his eyes. How long would it take you? Patton doesn't hesitate. 3 days. The room reacts instantly. 3 days to disengage, pivot, and launch a full-scale counterattack through snowbound terrain against armored German divisions. Some officers think Patton has finally gone too far. Others assume he misspoke. Eisenhower studies him carefully. He has seen Patton bluff before. He has seen bravado, showmanship, reckless confidence. But this feels different. How soon can you attack? Eisenhower presses. Patton's answer is immediate. I can attack in 72 hours. You can almost hear the room breathe in. 72 hours. Not to prepare. Not to move. To attack. Eisenhower realizes something in that moment, something unsettling and extraordinary. Patton isn't improvising. He's already planned this. While everyone else assumed the Germans were finished, Patton had anticipated a counteroffensive. While intelligence reports dismissed the Ardennes as quiet, Patton had quietly prepared contingency orders, rehearsed pivots, drilled staff officers for a scenario no one else believed would happen. This wasn't confidence. It was foresight. Eisenhower glances back at the map, then at Patton again. Outside, the snow keeps falling. In Bastogne, men are digging deeper into frozen ground, unaware that this conversation is taking place. Eisenhower breaks the silence. George, you really mean it? Patton nods once. Yes, sir. For the first time since the German offensive began, Eisenhower feels the shape of an answer forming. Fragile, risky, but real. If Patton can do what he's promising, if the Third Army can turn and strike north in time, Bastogne might hold. The German timetable might break. The entire offensive could stall. Or collapse. Eisenhower straightens. Very well, he says, you're on. Patton turns to leave, already issuing orders in his head, already racing the clock. Behind him, Eisenhower remains staring at the map, at Bastogne, circled in red, fully aware that everything now rests on a promise made in a snowbound room. And outside, the temperature keeps dropping. Patton is halfway down the corridor before the weight of what he's just said settles on anyone else. Boots echo against stone floors. Aides scramble to keep pace as he snaps instructions without breaking stride. The promise he made, 72 hours, was not theater. It was a deadline, and the clock has already started. Outside, the wind cuts through Versailles like a blade. Patton steps into the cold, pulls on his gloves and looks east, toward an army pointed the wrong direction. Third Army headquarters is a storm of activity by nightfall. Maps are torn from walls and replaced with new ones. Telephones ring non-stop. Staff officers who thought they understood chaos are about to meet a new definition of it. The order Patton issues is brutally simple. Every corps in Third Army will pivot north. Every division will move. Every hour counts. The problem is physics. Tanks don't turn on ice. Trucks don't float through snowdrifts. Roads through the Ardennes are narrow even in summer. Now they're clogged with refugees, abandoned vehicles, shattered trees. Fuel convoys are already stretched thin. Ammunition dumps are in the wrong place. Artillery is pointed the wrong way. And the weather is merciless. Snowstorms roll in thick waves, visibility collapsing to yards. Engines freeze overnight. Men chip ice from tracks with bayonets. Radios crackle and die in the cold. Yet somehow it starts to move. Patton's staff had rehearsed this. Quietly. Secretly. Months earlier, Patton had ordered contingency plans drawn up for a German counterattack through the Ardennes, an idea most Allied commanders dismissed outright. Now those dusty folders are slammed open, grease pencils flying across maps. Routes are assigned, timetables are enforced, Any unit that lags is replaced. There is no room for debate. Patton's order carries a single unspoken message: Bastogne must not fall. South of the encirclement, the men who will lead the attack feel it first. At the head of the advance is Major General Hugh Gaffey's 4th Armored Division, Patton's spearhead, hardened by months of relentless combat across France. They are exhausted. They are low on fuel, but they are used to impossible orders. When Gaffey receives his instructions, he doesn't ask why. He asks where. To Bastogne, Patton says, fast. Inside Bastogne, time moves differently. Daylight is a rumor, nights stretch endlessly. German shells crash into the town with mechanical precision. Buildings crumble, fires burn low, starved of fuel. The men of the 101st Airborne know they're surrounded. They can hear German tanks at night, engines idling, tracks grinding slowly, confidently. On December 19th, a German delegation approaches under a white flag. They bring a demand for surrender. Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe reads it once, snorts, and hands it back. Nuts! The reply spreads through Bastogne like a spark. But bravado doesn't stop blood loss. It doesn't fill empty magazines, and it doesn't answer the question every man is afraid to ask. Is anyone coming? Back outside the pocket, the answer is fighting through the snow. The 4th Armored Division pushes north, smashing into German roadblocks, skirmishing with Panzer grenadiers hidden in forests. Every mile is contested. Every bridge is a gamble, rigged with explosives or defended by anti-tank guns waiting in silence. Sherman tanks slide on ice, engines roaring, tracks biting desperately for traction. Infantry follows on foot, breath steaming, fingers numb on triggers. Patton demands constant updates. How far? How fast? How many? There are no speeches now, no theatrics, just pressure. Relentless pressure. At SHAEF, Eisenhower watches the situation with grim focus. Reports from Bastogne are dire. Supplies are critically low. Casualties are mounting. Weather still grounds Allied aircraft. No airdrops, no close air support. And yet something has changed. German intelligence reports show confusion. Units meant to push west are being diverted south to deal with Patton's advance. Timetables are slipping. Fuel shortages worsen. Eisenhower realizes the German offensive has hit its first true resistance. Not a line. A fist. December 21st. The snow finally breaks. Clouds thin just enough for Allied aircraft to punch through. C-47s roar overhead, dropping parachutes heavy with ammunition, food, medical supplies. Men in Bastogne cheer weakly, some too exhausted to stand. It's a lifeline, but a fragile one. The ground battle still decides everything. Patton checks the time. The 72 hours are nearly gone. December 22nd. The 4th Armored Division reaches the village of Eisenhower, just south of Bastogne. German resistance stiffens. Panzer IVs and infantry dig in along the final approaches. Artillery hammers the road ahead. Patton radios Gaffey directly. Get through. No elaboration. Just an order. Sherman tanks surge forward, guns firing point-blank. Infantry charges behind them, slipping and falling, dragging wounded clear of the road. A tank commander named Lieutenant Charles Boggess pushes ahead despite heavy fire, refusing to slow. The road is chaos, burning vehicles, shattered trees, screaming shells. Then suddenly, a break. At 4:50 p.m., a Sherman from the 4th Armored punches through the German line and reaches the outskirts of Bastogne. The encirclement is cracked. Not shattered. Cracked. Inside the town, word spreads cautiously at first. Then unmistakably. American tanks. American voices. Help has arrived. But the battle is not over, not even close. Eisenhower receives the message minutes later. Patton has done it. In 72 hours. Yet as Eisenhower exhales for the first time in days, another realization sets in, just as heavy as the first. Breaking into Bastogne is one thing. Holding the corridor against a furious German counterattack is another entirely. And now the Germans know exactly where to strike. The road into Bastogne is barely wide enough for 2 tanks to pass. It winds through shattered villages and frozen fields, a thin, vulnerable artery cut through enemy-held ground. Snowbanks rise like walls on either side, stained with oil and blood. Burned-out vehicles mark the path, some American, some German, silent warnings of how fragile this connection really is. This is not a rescue. It's a lifeline, and it can be severed at any moment. The first American tank rolls into Bastogne under fire. Men of the 101st Airborne stare at it in disbelief, some too exhausted to cheer, others laughing in short, broken bursts. One paratrooper reaches out and slaps the frozen armor as it passes, just to be sure it's real. But the relief is brief. German artillery responds almost immediately, zeroing in on the corridor. Shells slam into the road, tearing holes through snow and asphalt. Trees explode into splinters. The narrow supply route becomes a killing zone. Patton knows this will happen. He had never intended the 4th Armored's breakthrough to end the fight. It was only the opening move. Outside Bastogne, the Germans regroup with grim speed. Units from the 26th Volksgrenadier Division and elements of the 5th Panzer Army shift south, determined to crush the corridor before it can be widened. Their orders are clear: cut Patton's advance, isolate Bastogne again, and finish the encircled Americans once and for all. They hit hard. At dawn, German armor counterattacks through the fog, tanks emerging suddenly from tree lines, guns already firing. American Shermans answer back, muzzle flashes strobing in the snow. Infantry clashes erupt at point-blank range, rifle fire, grenades, bayonets. There is no room to maneuver. Just forward. Patton arrives closer to the front, impatient with distance. He moves between command posts, demanding speed, demanding aggression. When one officer expresses concern about overextension, Patton cuts him off. "We're not here to hold ground," he snaps. "We're here to take it." Orders go out immediately. The corridor will be widened. German positions on both sides will be smashed. Bastogne will not be allowed to become another island. Inside Bastogne, the fight continues as if no rescue ever happened. German shells still fall, snipers still stalk the ruins, the wounded keep coming, but morale shifts subtly at first, then unmistakably. Men who had been counting bullets now think in hours. Men who had prepared to die now prepare to hold. McAuliffe walks the lines, exchanging quick words, clapping shoulders. The paratroopers don't cheer him. They nod. That's enough. They know Patton is out there. And Patton does not stop. December 23rd. The weather clears completely. For the first time since the offensive began, Allied air power floods the sky. Thunderbolts and Mustangs scream low over the battlefield, rockets and bombs tearing into German armor caught in the open. Supply drops increase. The corridor breathes. German commanders feel the shift immediately. What had been a bold offensive now feels like a struggle for survival. Eisenhower watches the reports with a mix of relief and calculation. Patton has stabilized the southern shoulder of the German advance. Bastogne holds. The German timetable, so carefully planned, is unraveling. But Eisenhower also sees the cost. Casualties mount. Equipment losses climb. The fighting around Bastogne becomes some of the most brutal of the war. Villages change hands multiple times in a single day. Men freeze to death in foxholes they cannot leave. Victory, Eisenhower knows, is no longer a question of speed. It's a question of endurance. By Christmas Day, the corridor is secure enough to allow sustained movement. Patton sends a short message to his commanders. Keep pushing. There are no decorations at the front, no songs, just the sound of artillery and the low rumble of engines grinding forward through snow and ruin. German resistance weakens, not from lack of courage, but from lack of fuel, ammunition, and time. The offensive that had terrified the Allied command days earlier now bleeds itself dry against stubborn defense and relentless counterattack. Bastogne has become the anvil. Patton is the hammer. On December 26th, Patton finally allows himself a brief pause. He receives confirmation that the German counterattacks have failed. The corridor has held. Bastogne is no longer in danger of being re-encircled. The impossible promise has been kept. 72 hours. Eisenhower reflects on it quietly. The decision to trust Patton, to bet the southern flank on one man's confidence and preparation, had been a risk of the highest order. But without it, the Battle of the Bulge might have ended very differently. Instead, the German offensive has stalled. And now, the Allies are ready to strike back. But as the snow continues to fall across the Ardennes, Eisenhower understands something else, something darker. The price of stopping the last great German gamble has been paid in frozen blood and shattered towns. And the war is not yet finished. Not by a long shot. The maps begin to change color. Red arrows fade, blue lines push forward again. At SHAEF, the frantic energy that once filled every corridor slows to something heavier, calmer, but weighed down by what it has cost. Eisenhower stands alone longer now, studying the Ardennes as if the forest itself might speak. Bastogne still sits there, scarred and ringed in pencil marks, but it is no longer circled in red. It has become a pivot point. For Eisenhower, the relief is not triumphant. It is sobering. The Battle of the Bulge has exposed something no Allied commander wanted to admit, that the enemy was not finished, that complacency had crept in, that victory was not inevitable. The German army had struck with desperation, but also with precision. And it nearly worked. Eisenhower knows that without Patton's readiness, without that quiet planning done in the margins when no one else believed it necessary, the outcome could have been catastrophic. He does not say this publicly, but privately it reshapes him. Patton, meanwhile, does not linger on Bastogne. He never does. As soon as the corridor is secure, Third Army presses east again, grinding forward through villages whose names will never be remembered, fighting battles that will never be filmed. The men follow because momentum has become their shield. Patton writes in his diary briefly, "Good fighting, Bastogne relieved, onward." No flourish, no self-congratulation. Just movement. In Bastogne, the survivors take stock. The town is barely recognizable. Buildings are hollowed out. Trees stand stripped and blackened. Civilians emerge slowly from cellars, eyes wide, stunned by the silence that follows weeks of constant shelling. The 101st Airborne counts its losses. Some companies are reduced to handfuls of men. But Bastogne held, and holding it had mattered. Eisenhower's realization settles fully now, not as a single moment, but as a truth formed from many smaller ones. Wars are not decided only by numbers. They turn on preparation, on imagination, on leaders willing to plan for what others dismiss. Patton had seen the Ardennes not as quiet ground, but as dangerous ground. He had trusted the enemy's capability even when it seemed unlikely. That trust in the enemy and in preparation had saved the Allied line. As January drags on, the German offensive collapses completely. Fuel runs out, Reinforcements fail to arrive. The last reserves are spent in futile counterattacks that gain nothing but graves in the snow. The Allies retake the ground they had lost methodically, relentlessly. The Bulge flattens, the front stabilizes, and then it begins to move east again. Years later, Eisenhower will be asked about Patton, about his temperament, his flaws, his brilliance. Eisenhower will choose his words carefully. Patton was difficult, dangerous even, but in December 1944, when the war tilted on a knife's edge, he had been exactly what the moment required. A commander who had already imagined disaster and planned how to defeat it. The forests of the Ardennes grow quiet again. Snow melts, shell craters fill with water, roads are repaired. New generations pass through Bastogne without knowing what it once endured. But for those who were there, the memory remains sharp. The cold, the fear, and the moment when, against all odds, help arrived through the snow. Not by chance, but by design. And